Shabbat Shalom. The Kohen room in Paperman's seems to be a strange place to start a Devar Torah. But this week's Torah portion, Parshat Emor, begins exactly there, in the Kohen room of Paperman's. Most of us are familiar with the fact that a Kohen cannot come in contact with a dead person. The question that we often ask is, why? So let's go back to the very beginning of this week's Torah portion. It begins with God telling Moses to address the Kohanim directly. For the first time and the only time in the Torah, the Kohanim are addressed. God says to Moses, Emor el ha-Kohanim ve'amarta lehem lenefesh lo yitma be'amav. A Kohen must under no circumstances become ritually impure by contact with the dead. As I taught a few weeks ago in one of our parsha lessons, ritual impurity or tumah is imparted to Kohanim when they come in contact with the dead, and that prevents them from doing their work, whether in the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary in the wilderness, or in the temple after Solomon built it in Jerusalem. The only exception to not coming in contact with the dead is coming in contact and burying one's most immediate relatives. A mother, a father, a son, a daughter, a brother. The Torah doesn't even permit a Kohen to bury his own wife. Only the rabbis subsequently become more lenient in that area. The Torah, on the other hand, is restrictive even on who a Kohen could marry. A Kohen, according to the Torah, is not permitted to marry a divorcee. And later, our rabbis, who are lenient in permitting a Kohen to bury his wife, even restrict a Kohen from marrying a convert to Judaism. But we have to return to our original question. Why all these rules? The answer lies in our Torah's understanding of the purpose of the people Israel. God tells Moses, V'atem tihiyu li mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh. Israel shall be a kingdom of kohanim, a kingdom of priests, and a holy nation. The Israelites are set apart from all the other nations by leading a distinctive lifestyle. That is what makes the nation as a whole a kingdom of priests, a mamlechet kohanim. Parshat Emor sets the Kohanim apart from the rest of the Israelites by means of symbolic restrictions and obligations. Just as Israel as a whole is to serve as a light unto the nations by living up to an exemplary standard of ethics and behavior, so too the Kohanim within the nation of Israel represent a maximal level of devotion to God by adhering to their additional obligations and restrictions, which are outlined in this week's parsha. Kohanim are always expected to be ready to engage in the sacred service of the temple, and even today, Kohanim set themselves aside by not entering into a cemetery or entering into the main chapel of Paperman's, for example, when a funeral is taking place. The world has, of course, changed since the temple was destroyed over 1900 years ago. While no one can predict the future, no one is really expecting the Jerusalem temple to be rebuilt and the temple service to start up again anytime soon. Our own conservative movement has followed some of the thinking of medieval rabbis who were not entirely convinced that the temple service would take on the same form of worship as it did in ancient times. Being conservative and progressive at the same time, our movement has also advocated holding on to some of the restrictions of the past, but like the rabbis of the Talmud, lifting and liberalizing others. And so today we continue to encourage Kohanim who attend funerals to stay in the Kohen room, symbolically remembering that their status as religious leaders shows greater devotion or showed greater devotion to God in ancient times. But by the same token, we also understand that Kohanim, like the rest of us, fall in love with whom they fall in love. Sometimes a divorcee, sometimes a convert. The status of Kohanim changes when they marry a Kohen, when they marry a convert, or when they marry a divorcee. But nonetheless, we as conservative rabbis, for the most part, officiate at those marriages. A Kohen who marries a divorcee, a Kohen who marries a convert, that marriage remains a valid marriage, and we encourage people to marry the persons in their lives with whom they are most in love. But on the other hand, the status of the Kohen is pulled back, and some of the limited contemporary privileges of the Kohen are restricted and removed. Our Kohanim today serve as exemplars of what once was, but they also remain part and parcel of the larger Jewish community. We hope that our Kohanim will one day again serve God in the temple in Jerusalem in a way that meets with our contemporary needs. Ken Yehi Ratzon, so may it be. Amen.